Now that Captain Marvel is well into its second week, it's worthwhile looking at the real numbers, the inflation-adjusted numbers, instead of comparing Captain Marvel to films that were released many years ago. So, can Captain Marvel defeat the 100th biggest film of all time adjusted for inflation? And more importantly, what is the 100th biggest film of all time adjusted for inflation? I was very surprised to see what it was. It's Mrs. Doubtfire. Mrs. Doubtfire is the 100th biggest film adjusted for inflation in the history of the world. It's an absolute disgrace. I mean, I know there's a lot of bad films on the list here, at least what I would call bad films. The box office is obviously no indication of quality, but Mrs. Doubtfire, top 100. Very, very surprising to me that Mrs. Doubtfire is the 100th biggest film of all time. Comes in with $475 million adjusted for inflation. As I've previously stated, I don't think Captain Marvel has a chance of defeating the box office domestic total for Wonder Woman, which is $412 million. I think Wonder Woman adjusted for inflation goes up a little bit to $416 million, so obviously you don't think that Captain Marvel can defeat Wonder Woman's adjusted for inflation money. So I obviously think there's absolutely no chance, if it can't get to $412 million, of beating the $475 million to kick Mrs. Doubtfire down, which I do think is a shame. I would like to see Captain Marvel do better than Mrs. Doubtfire. It is a bit of a disgrace that Captain Marvel can't beat Mrs. Doubtfire. But that's not really Captain Marvel's fault. There's only 99 films that have beat Mrs. Doubtfire, so can't really blame Captain Marvel for being unable to do it when most films can't do it either. I thought that Captain Marvel was just meh. It was neither good nor bad. It was just whatever. I think I would watch Captain Marvel a second time before I watch Mrs. Doubtfire a second time. In fact, I'm not sure if I've watched all of Mrs. Doubtfire before. I know I've seen pieces of it. It's terrible. It's a terrible film. I don't know how it made $475 million. And interestingly, Attack of the Clones is right there on number 98. It is the 98th biggest film of all time adjusted for inflation. So there's another film that, well, to be honest, I don't know. I would put it in my top 98. I'm not a big fan of Attack of the Clones. I don't know if I'd ever bother watching it again. But do I think there's 97 films better than Attack of the Clones? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe. I'm not sure. But it's number 98. It'll soon be number 99. I'm sure Endgame will get a much bigger total than $480 million. So Star Wars Attack of the Clones will still be in the top 100. But Mrs. Doubtfire will be kicked down to 101 when Endgame is released. Wonder Woman is currently ranked as the 128th biggest film adjusted for inflation with $416 million. And Captain America Civil War is a little bit above that on number 124 with $422 million. Now, Wonder Woman made a little bit more money originally. It made $412 million versus $408 million for Captain America. But because Captain America was another year and a bit before it, it's been adjusted up a little bit to $422 million. So when we look at the totals right now as they stand on a graph, we can see that Captain America Civil War is a little bit ahead of Captain Marvel, but that is the Captain America Civil War not adjusted for inflation total, so that obviously gets bumped up a bit more over that. But there's no evidence right now that Captain Marvel is going to overtake Captain America Civil War. Therefore, it should get a total less than what Captain America Civil War got, which was less than what Wonder Woman got. So I don't think there's any chance that Captain Marvel can get higher than the $412 or $416 million that Wonder Woman got. And so I don't think Captain Marvel will get to be the 128th biggest film of all time. I do think that it'll get into the top 200, though. Right now, the 200th biggest film of all time is Superman 2 from 1981. On $351 million adjusted for inflation. I think Captain Marvel will definitely get more than $351 million. I predicted that it'll get $382 million or somewhere around there. Deadpool is ranked 164th and it made $381 million. So somewhere around the Deadpool amount of money, that's where I predicted that Captain Marvel will get in there. Batman Forever made $382, Rambo First Blood made $382, or First Blood Part 2. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix made $383, so somewhere around there. It's quite tight in there. There's only a few $1 million in about 10 different spaces. Interestingly, at number 151 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. That comes in with $393 million. And at this stage, I don't think that Captain Marvel can get more than that, but it's not that far away from where I'm predicting it to be. It's only another $11 million. So it is possible that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 might earn less money adjusted for inflation than Captain Marvel. Again, box office money doesn't denote how good a film is. I don't know if there'd be any real credible people that would review Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 as being worse than Captain Marvel. I know Captain Marvel has a lot of 5-star reviews floating in all over the place and a lot of media protection, but come on, is it really better than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? If Captain Marvel does make more money in the US domestic box office than Wonder Woman, if it makes more than, say, $400 million, that means that internationally or globally or cumulatively, it will actually earn about or a bit more than what Marvel's The Avengers made, not adjusted for inflation. Now, the main reason that the inflation numbers only really exist or are easy to get for the US domestic box office total is because it's a lot easier to calculate inflation and ticket prices based on one country where there's a good history of all the economic data. It's actually quite hard to calculate the inflation and ticket price increases in all of the other countries. So it's not super easy to find data on what the global inflated numbers are for the biggest films of all times. But anyway, the non-inflated total for Marvel The Avengers, the first Avengers film, was $1.5 billion. Okay, and it is the 6th biggest film of all time, not adjusted for inflation. Now, I did make a video about a week ago, or a bit more than that, where I said, can Captain Marvel defeat Jurassic World and earn more than $1.6 billion and become the 5th biggest film of all time? It's nowhere near being able to do that. It's nowhere near being able to get bigger than Marvel The Avengers. So for anyone that thinks that Captain Marvel can actually earn more money domestically than Wonder Woman, anything is possible, but it means it will be the 2nd biggest MCU film, not adjusted for inflation, of all time. It'll have made more money than The Avengers, and it'll be the 6th biggest film of all time. I really don't think that can happen. When you look at the current numbers and the current charts, it really can't happen. But having said that, it is well ahead of where Titanic was in Titanic's run, and Titanic is the 2nd biggest film of all time. So if people just want to keep going back and seeing Captain Marvel every week over and over again, Captain Marvel could earn $10 billion. Wouldn't put any money on it, but it's definitely possible. And just lastly here, I came across this article. I have no idea who the guy is that wrote it. I mean, I don't really read reviews from anyone, so I don't know if this guy's credible or not. It's from Forbes. And it's so preposterous what's written here. I don't know if this person is mocking basically cat ladies that watch Captain Marvel, or if this guy is actually a cat lady. So I'm not sure if he's actually being serious or if he's making fun of social justice warriors, but I'll just read this out here. This highlights how ridiculous the so-called record-breaking things are for Captain Marvel. He says, with a global cumulative over $555 million, it is past Puss in Boots' global cumulative to become the 2nd biggest about-a-cat movie in box office history. Secret Life of Pets was way too dog-centric to qualify, but we'll see if Secret Life of Pets 2 improves its feline representation. It will hopefully have 2 cats with names talking about something other than a dog. Next up is Walt Disney's The Lion King, which has earned $422 million domestically, $967 million worldwide, counting the various reissues. Even if Captain Marvel tops Young Justice, and so I'm not going to read the rest, but basically he's highlighting that it's now the 2nd biggest film that has a cat in it in history. That's what we're going for. Again, I think he's making fun of cat people, but I don't know who he is. His name's Scott Mendelson. I've no idea. But I just thought it was funny and a good way to highlight where some of the people are grabbing onto the so-called records that Captain Marvel's breaking, a film that won't even be the 100th biggest film of all time. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.